Hi everyone, welcome. Sorry for the delay. Startup Wise Guys and the panel is here. I will give the word to Zane to make a quick intro on the topic, and then let's go around with some intros from the speakers.
Thanks, Louise. Hey everyone. We have also Farid joining in here. We were laughing that you might misunderstand the title of today's talk, that it's making IT work, and we're struggling a little bit with Farid's microphone. But I actually hope he's with us, Farid.
I am with you guys. Can you guys hear me good?
Yes, awesome.
Amazing.
We just needed to go live for Farid to fully join us, and actually then I will just do a very quick intro and disappear from here. So the reason we're having this awesome panel here today is that on the last days of year 2020, we launched a rather big report about Baltic startup scene, and we took a look also at the corporate innovation. So the stage the corporate innovation is in the Baltics, as that's where Startup Wise Guys is from. We were also very happy to have some good partners there, and we have Kristaps Banga here today from Accenture Latvia, and we'll be very happy to hear your experience as you are matchmaking the startups with a broader network of Accenture and also working on innovation projects. But then we thought it's actually it's kind of like a cool topic to take way broader beyond the borders of Baltics, and therefore we invited more people here, and also Farid from our team, who's an expert on the topic, and we wanted to expand the discussion or the kind of research we started doing with the Baltic Startup Scene report, which, by the way, is still available for download on the link. No, below there below, and today we have awesome experts from all over Europe. We're pretty proud of that, to look deeper in how corporates and startups can make the collaboration work. Farid, the floor is yours.
Thanks a lot, Zane. So yes, today has been crazy with respect to technical. The internet, the mic, everything had to kind of play up, but we're finally here. So thanks a lot for the lead in here and for having my back. So my name is Farid. It's great to have all the panelists over here. What I want to do is, firstly, we know that innovation and startups are both hot topics in their own space. So what I would love to do is give the floor to each of the panelists, welcome them. Let's see if you can do an introduction of yourself and what you do in 20 seconds or less. And then what we'll do is, of course, this is going to be a panel that's going to be very interactive. So folks who are watching us on Facebook, you can actually ask questions directly by writing in the comments, and I will make sure that I can ask those questions directly to our panelists, and hopefully we'll get a great conversation going. This is not about asking a very dry questions. It's about being conversational, asking tough questions, and then moving forward from that. As you can all see, I've logged in from my phone because my laptop, after all the odds, hasn't managed to work. So apologies for this. But let's start. I'm going to go top to bottom on my screen. Let's start with Maurice. Let's do a quick 20-second intro of what you do, Maurice, and then we'll go to Louis, and then we'll go to Kristaps. Just because you're left top to bottom on my screen. Go for it, Maurice.
All right, thanks. My name is Maurice McGinley. I'm Director of Innovation at Avast Software based in Prague. Previously, I've been a founder and worked in consumer electronics, fintech, consumer electronics in Netherlands and Asia, fintech in New York, and public emergency warning systems in Australia.
Thanks a lot, Maurice. Louis, over to you.
Hello, I'm Luis from Madrid. I was working at Accenture until January, but before that, I work in many design companies, Capgemini, consulting companies mostly, working for corporates. And my job was building user experience and design teams to try to center the organizations in the customer. And as a consequence, the normal thing when you look at the customer, you start innovating. So after that, I was in Fjord. It was acquired by Accenture. I helped Accenture to develop design and innovation capabilities.
All right. Thanks, Louis. Kristaps?
Thanks, Farid. My name is Kristaps. I'm Accenture Latvia innovation lead. And kind of the role itself includes building corporations with the startups, but as well also building kind of internal so to say, startups and then spinning them out as a kind of new business entities. Yeah.
Awesome, thanks a lot. So I just wanted everybody to hear, to know who's watching us right now. You can ask questions on Facebook directly, commenting. They'll come to us and we'll ask. It's good to have this kind of varied panel over here, just so you know why this panel was set up. We have Maurice, who's coming from the corporate side and looking at innovation. Maurice also helps and works a lot with startups, and so he has a really good idea of like why things work and why things don't work. Kristaps is also obviously, with Accenture, you've been working with a lot of your clients and their needs, and how innovation can actually, be used as a tool for consulting companies to actually provide for their customers. And Louis, you come from a very interesting background where you had the Accenture background as well. But for me, I know Fjord as a design company, and I think of it as a startup in a sense that was acquired by a big company. So you have this concept of Accenture trying to innovate by working with another company. So you're on the both receiving and sending point of view, right? Now, I wanted you to all know that this. So I'm going to introduce myself first. My name is Farid. I'm the program director at Wise Guys Cyber. I've previously been working as a managing director for a cyber North accelerators, and I wear different hats, and one of them is innovation through my own Take 3 Innovate consulting company, and I do innovation for various corporates. And I teach innovation by design at INSEAD as well through one of the online programs, right? So that's a bit about me. But what I wanted to do, kind of really talk about, start this panel, is that I wanted two things. Firstly, corporate innovation normally gets a really bad, let's say bad rap when we talk about it in panels, because everybody says, well, it's going to be difficult to do this. I want everybody to know that today we're going to talk about how can this work? How do we get corporate innovation to work? How to make it work? So this is going to be a positive panel going forward, right? But to get to that, we need to kind of really understand and ask a very simple question. And the first question I want to ask is, startups and corporates. Can corporates work with startups? Yes or no? And everybody has one say, yes or no. So people of the panelists, raise your hand if you think that corporates can work with startups. Okay. So this is a matter of fact. Corporates can work with startups. Now here's a question for you. Have you seen the success of corporates working with startups? Raise your hands if you have seen corporates and startups successfully work together. Okay, so yes. There's 3 out of 4. Okay, now I want to kind of delve into this question, and maybe let's start with Kristaps on this. So Kristaps, one of the things that we want to try and figure out is, how can this happen? Like, so give me your thoughts on what was the kind of outcome of this collaboration of startups and corporates, how it went around, and was there something very specific that you think is needed for this collaboration to work?
Yeah, thanks. So I would start from the from the end of your question. So what's needed? I would say, and we are always very transparently sharing that the needed is patience, right? Because this is a different speed how those two partners work, right? And if both parties are aligned on the speed, then I would say that there will be success, and that has been proven, right? So that's A, and B. I would say, and again, we are very honest, at least in our region, that we are more tend to work with the scale-ups. We enter and we support startups to help them to accelerate forward towards being a scale-up. But we are also very honest that we need, at the business table, to work with the big clients, to work at scale. We need companies who have learned to work at scale, right? So that's the second one. And then, so yeah,
patience. So you need patience, and you kind of focus more on scale-ups, which is a little less risk for corporates, right?
I wouldn't say that the risk is an issue. I would say that the experience working at scale. Also, that's the one. also the size of the team, because sometimes there's a very cool idea, but once you need to deliver quite kind of complex projects, it's not enough with the 2-3, let's say, data scientists, right? You really need a team. And there is a kind of experience how quickly you can ramp up these teams and do this knowledge transfer, right? And the third one, I would say it's important if the both parties are ready to kind of co-invest, right? So it's not just a kind of buyers and suppliers kind of partnership. I believe in this partnership, in this co-creation, right?
Okay. Okay,
So
good. So co-creation.
Okay,
great. Let's move over to Maurice, just because you're next on my on my screen. What you mentioned that you've seen this work. So give me a few of the ingredients that you think are needed to make this collaboration work.
I agree with Kristaps. I think scale up rather than startup, and I think that's typical. That's my experience, and I think it's typical across corporates. Because the ability, the skills to explore and to innovate, I mean, that's a separate set of skills. That's like, I don't know, it's like, if in mining, it would be geologists doing the exploration and the miners doing the mining, and the geologists are bad miners. So it's all about being efficient and getting the stuff out of the ground, extracting value. And that's who you hire in a corporate. You have people who are good at efficient extracting value, and it's difficult for them to cooperate with people who are exploring and taking risks. So instead, we're looking more for expanding our existing capabilities and scaling, and we'll look for startups who want to scale, and we'll take something that's proven and we think we can use our capabilities to expand it. So that's the standard M&A route. If we want to do something more level 2 innovation, then we can work with startups, but it's very important that our own company has the strategy clear, and I think often that's not the case. So we'll just look. Here's an interesting startup. It's in our area of expertise, and so let's talk to them. But actually, if they're in our area of expertise, that's less interesting. It's more interesting if they're doing something adjacent, so something that's new to us, then that's interesting. But then it needs to be aligned with our strategy, so the adjacent areas that we've already identified as being of interest. And my experience in many companies is that the company really isn't that clear about their own strategy, and unless the corporate is clear about the areas they're looking into, then it can be very frustrating for the startup or unprofitable for them to cooperate, because if they're in the same area, corporate's just going to wipe them out, and if they're in a new area, they don't know what to do.
So Maurice, I'm going to move to Luis next as well, but here's the point. I mean, a lot of what you said, it kind of works around the whole concept of this is what we know as a corporate, and that's why we're willing to take that risk, right? But I mean, and Luis will tell you here that the real innovation comes from we don't know what we don't know, and we have to take those risks to find out. And so extracting that value, and Luis, I don't know what your take on these ingredients are, but extracting these value, like the value from a scale-up perspective might not be as high as a startup from a startup. If you start collaborating at a startup space, but Luis, let's move over to you. What are the ingredients according to you for this collaboration to really work?
As Kristaps said, it's patience, obviously, but because the point is that corporations need results fast, and startups don't. They need patience, as we said, and also startups are very good and quick at collaborating, but corporations no. So that's the main problem. How do you integrate? How do you make the startup to understand? Because sometimes when it's people that are coming outside of the corporate world, they don't understand the dynamics, no? So it's quite complex. So I think that you need on the receiving side on the corporation, this is what you need is people that are able to translate the complexity of the corporation into something that is actionable. So it would say like human APIs, no? Translators, people that are hybrid, that can think in the same time in terms of networks, innovation, risk, and at the same time translate that into how does it mean this for this corporation. So you need a totally new type of teams. The startups don't have this because they're more network oriented, more experimentation, whatever. Mm-hmm. They have a very good thing, which is they are very close to the problem and to the solution and to the customer. Corporations are on the other side, they have other problems, which is they look inwards. They have to manage their own complexity. And also they are very far from the customer. As they grow, everything is looked through numbers. And I think most of the startups, they still have this closeness to the customer. So that allows you to innovate a lot. And finally, innovation with corporates, it depends on the corporates and the people in the corporates. If you are a customer-centric corporation, it will be much easier to innovate than if you are a more complex engineering company. Depends on the customer, I think.
But so I mean, here's some really interesting points that all three of you mentioned about, things, the ingredients that the corporates need: patience, being able to take very defined risks, being able to kind of really pick the one, the startups or the scale-ups in the space that they know. Like you said, Luis, having human APIs, parts of the organization that can interact with the startups, right? The funny thing is, corporates actually have that. Like, there's a study being done which is like 91% of corporate innovation spend gets wasted, and these are corporates who know this, right? So let's kind of go one step deeper. I mean, our KPI is the problem in corporates, and I want to cover both sides, because we put the blame on corporates, but we also have to kind of understand, like, what do startups need to do to work with corporates? And I feel like a lot of time that's uncovered. So let's go one level deeper into the corporates. And so all the corporates know that they need patience. They need to kind of invest in things that they know. One of the main questions startups ask me, like, if I'm going to do this, why doesn't a corporate do it? And Luis, you mentioned they're very away from the customer. So let's kind of go a bit deeper. Let's go deeper into the corporates and try and kind of understand what other things are missing for the partnership. So you think that the elements that we need. Let's figure out like one element that's missing from the corporates that leads to the biggest failure. And I'm going to now start with Maurice, because you're on the top of my.
And we lost Farid.
Okay.
We can continue on the question.
I'm here. Sorry. So what is that one element that's missing from the corporates?
The element that's missing from I think
to make this work.
Yeah, I think a tolerance for risk, and I think an acceptance of risk.
Okay.
And I can elaborate if you like, but yeah.
No, that's fine. I just wanted to kind of touch, because again, I wanted to kind of understand like what is working, what's not working, and this is the question, and I just want the answer. So I understand, and I completely agree with you about the being able to tolerate risk and take those risks. Kristaps, what is that one element missing from the corporates to make this partnership, to make this collaboration work?
Yeah, I would agree. One of the things, of course, is to this kind of how long corporates are willing to take a risk, right? Because not always it's kind of crystal clear from the very beginning. But as well, I would say, as also colleagues mentioned, right? Maybe at the beginning, it seems like a very good idea. You go into that, and then you struggle that there is a different viewpoint of how the both sides see the business, right? So maybe the startups looks on that more from the kind of fancy side and having the kind of all that side. And again, I'm coming back to this scalability, right? And I think that's a very crucial thing, because corporates, in most of the cases, those are companies who operate globally, right? And they, at the very beginning, they look on the things at scale, so in quantitative kind of KPIs, right? And that's something I would say that we need together to learn, probably to give a try, to a pilot, and then help those kind of startup scale-ups then to kind of really from startup to scale up, right?
But what would you say is missing from corporates right now to make the success? What is the one element that's missing? And if you don't have an answer, that's fine as well, because
I would say
mean,
time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Louis, over to you. What do you think is the one element that's missing? Because then we'll move on to some of the solutions, right? So
I think simplicity. Simplicity.
Yes.
Collaborating with startups, with corporates, sometimes they dry up all the startup, the muscle, the energy. So I think simplicity, which is also the other side of risk, no? So you can help with a sandbox, corporate sandbox, or this human API, or this space where the corporate and the startup can collaborate, can co-create, experiment, and learn, no? So this is for me the main thing. The risk and complexity, no, are the main things that could be a problem, no?
Okay, understood. So we have like time. We have Maurice. You said appetite for risk and simplicity. So these are the three things that corporates are missing today. So if any corporates listening, kind of work on this, right? Okay. So now we go into the situation that we're in today. And again, I wanted your viewpoints on this. The last year has been quite different, quite challenging, quite inspirational for some people. There was an often saying in the beginning of 2020 that all the great innovations and unicorns stemmed out of the 2008 recession. So sometimes like a change of pace or limitation of resources enables kind of innovation. Now let's talk about one of the big things that's happened, which is like this situation where people are no longer working in offices. In-person collaboration is becoming difficult. It's all being remote. So how does this remote working situation kind of affect the process of collaboration between startups and corporates? Is it better that it's like this? Is it worse that the situation has reached a place where you can't physically go and meet and collaborate together? So for this, I want to start with Louis. Let's start with you on how is the remote work situation, this online non-physical situation, affected the collaboration of startups and corporates?
Okay, in the case of remote, I think the one thing that we are missing are the unspoken cues. No, when you are exchanging or interacting with someone in a physical space. No, I always said that the pheromones have something to do. No, we don't have pheromones. We are on a square screen, and everything that you do is all the time to a transaction. So this creates a lot of hidden things, no, that you are not controlling. No, so sometimes that creates a little bit of anxiety. No, so the point is, I think what we're seeing is that the startups are very good because we are almost they are digital natives, and they only have one mission, which is getting the product ahead, no? And they're good at collaborating. But when it comes to the corporation, since it's very complex, sometimes all the interactions, they don't give a cue about how to interact, how to guide the startups through the corporate maze, no? So you need this part of, as I said, these people that can be a generous translator of this complexity, no? And because you have to rebuild trust in an online environment, and it's totally different. We don't have the typical design thinking workshops in physical. It's okay, mural and all these remote tools, but I think you have to decode trust and rebuild it online, no? And this is key for me to make work this partnership. Okay, so according to you, it's become worse to collaborate. It's become more difficult to collaborate. Challenging. I think there are people, it depends on people, because it's all about personality. There are people that are very, I call it consciously inefficient. No, they give you a call to see how are you, and they are not asking for something. So the point is, how can you create this conversation that you need when you are creating something? It's not about tasks. It's about this conversation that helps you to innovate and to have new ideas. No? Okay, understood. What about Kristaps? So, I mean, do you think that remote working has made it easier or more difficult?
Yeah, I would look on both two sides. So we have a practical experience, for example, and for me, again, maybe a small step back. So for me, co-innovation with ecosystem, it's actually not only with the startups, it's also with universities and research centers, right? Because I believe innovations it's ecosystem, it's even much broader, right? And so we have a very good example. We started collaboration with technical university because we wanted to move to the next level, specifically for a topic which is digital twin, right? And we needed a physical kind of analogs, this kind of environment, more to understand, more to engage that. So from that perspective, that was a very big challenge because we were blocked to assess and access this kind of physical environment, right? So that was a real challenge. If we look again from another examples, then for us as an Accenture, we are kind of very much used to work remotely. And I would say where I see the progress is, for example, for the teams who are international, right? Because prior to that, what also Luis mentioned, I totally agree. And I'm also a much bigger fan of physical kind of connection. And then actually it was a blocker for those who were partially remotely, right? Now, when everybody is remote, I see more and more kind of international teams appearing, right? Because there is no distance between that. And I see this as a plus because there is a diversity of different experience, diversity of different opinions. So I would say that adds value again.
It seems that that's going to happen
Okay,
for a while. But
so
maybe
I can jump in then.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah. So in my experience, the remote working in terms of collaborating, it's the same experience in terms of actually doing creative, innovative activities. But design sprints are just nowhere near as helpful if they're done remotely. And we would typically invite some external partners and sometimes startups to come in and it's less good. It's remote. However, at the same time, I agree. Also, it's leveled the playing field. We have some echo here. It's leveled the playing fields for distant teams and co-located teams, and it means that there's less of a distinction between the local and the distributed team. And of course, we're based all over the place, and so it's been good that way. And sometimes you don't even you can have a conversation later to find out where people actually are. That's interesting. So it's been good, but specifically with startups, the interaction I recently had with Startup Wise Guys actually put me in touch with lots of different startups, and some were really interesting. We could follow up with them, and that has been no change. It's still remote is most convenient because the startups are located all over the place, and we have conversations remotely, and people are much more, I think we can trust that people are much more comfortable connecting remotely. Everybody can do it now, and before there was always a little more friction in getting it set up.
Let's try.
Okay. Can you hear me, guys?
And then there's the technical problems, which are always a hassle.
Yeah, so we will have to talk about how corporates and startups can make IT work. Farid, there's an echo coming from your side, but maybe we can use this while that echo problem gets solved. We can use this space to jump on some questions that we had, and there is one about some specific collaboration examples. You also mentioned that you have had some calls. But is it do you have some examples that you could talk about? I'm not sure. That's probably some corporate lingo, JVs. I don't know what that is, but if you know, maybe you can jump on it.
Joint venture, yeah.
Yeah, maybe there's something that comes to your mind, and you can elaborate on this question.
Again, maybe I can use another example with another co-creation project. We recently kicked off the project together with University of Latvia, also with a very multi-dimensional team across the globe. So with the German quantum computing community, with a product owner from the States. So from that perspective, I would say very good. It's not a classical joint venture, right? But in looking from the ecosystem perspective, it is really a kind of a fusing different things, right, together. And again, this remote collaboration is no problem. You just need to align the time zones, and that's it, basically, right?
And in the case of acquisitions, I was part of one acquisition by Accenture, and so many others, and it worked because it's a way of developing new capabilities and new ways of working together. No, and on one side we have new capabilities of design and innovation for Accenture, which is more customer oriented, and at the same time new methods and new ways of working. So it was definitely a success, and also I think that many corporations are starting to learn how to acquire corporations without killing them. No, and we see a lot of companies in the consulting area, for instance, acquiring a lot of marketing and design companies just to innovate on top of the stack they have, technology and the consulting. So the technology is becoming an experience on one side, and the consulting is becoming a co-creation, a design process. So it's somehow democratizing and also making more collaborative across the silos of an organization. So it's also acquiring culture, no? And so, but I was most in the area of acquisitions more than in joint ventures. Yeah.
Okay. Does this still given? Okay, we're back. Finally, my internet is back. So apologies for everybody. This is one of the problems of, and it was quite timely as well that this problem did come when we were talking about remote working, right? Now, I wanted to kind of touch back on some of the remote working stuff that we talked about, and we kind of went, the next question was about very particular collaborations. I'm trying to kind of get my head still around a few things on on this collaboration. So you have you can, like you said, you can work on quantum computing, but is there any shortage of skills? Now let's kind of look at this collaboration and what skills might be needed, and I'm kind of key to kind of find out what is that one skill that you've seen that has worked in the past. And I'm happy to kind of Luis, if you want to start with that one, and then we can go to Maurice and then go to Kristaps. From a skills perspective, how are we doing?
I think one of the good things in startups is that everyone does everything more or less. They have a vision of what's happening all across the startup. No, so they're more generalists. No, obviously you have people that are engineers or marketing people, but they have a vision of what is happening all around. No, and in corporations, I think the people are more task oriented. They are more specialists. No. So that's the skill of being able to have this, as we say in design, T-shape, no? That you can see the breadth of the discipline at the same time be deep in something. I think is one of the things that is missing in the case of the corporation.
Okay, but Kristaps, do you agree with this? Coming from Accenture as well, I know that a lot of consulting companies, they like to go for deep knowledge folks. Does the T-shape still work?
Yeah, yes and no. I would say, again, I can give an example from our perspective, how we do this in Accenture Latvia. I would say the things are changing, right? So for the last 5, 6, 7 years, we also hiring a different type of person. So as I said, this diversity of different field experiences, it's very critical, right? So we need deep tech people, we need UX people, and we need also people who have been on a client side. So in other shoes, we need people who have been successfully, and also maybe not successfully, but have learned a lot also from the startups or small business side, right? So that gives a fusion of better understanding. And in parallel, we develop, the term of agile, I think it's known for everyone, but we develop also agile approach also in a managerial kind of layer. It's not only an IT development, but also we develop kind of very diverse and agile teams who then work on those projects. And that gives, I think it makes this touch point more smoother with the startups or with the ecosystem, right?
Okay.
And so from that perspective, I would say the skills, maybe what I see, what have changed through this kind of COVID approach, it's more important actually is this kind of storytelling and this elevator pitch, because you have a very shortage of time where you need to convince others what you want to sell or what you are good at or what you have, right? And we don't have that time. We have everybody 10 calls per day, right? You only have your 30 minutes. If you succeed, you succeed. If you don't, you don't.
So that's interesting, because one of the main things that we know in the startup wise guys accelerators that a lot of people find value is the pitching. Now, Maurice, over to you. I mean, you're in the corporate, so tell me a little bit more about the skills needed. I mean, are there enough skills? Are there shortage of skills? Are skills being overlooked at when we're talking about this collaboration? Because we're assuming that the corporates have the skills for corporates, the startups have the skills for startups, but to make this work.
Yeah. It is useful to have some people in the role, or the ability, as Luis is saying, to be the human API, who can translate and talk between different cultures.
Mm-hmm.
But not essential, because the projects that I've seen work the best are when there's a real business alignment, and then when the business alignment is clear, then the people in the corporate will make it work. And then in terms of the T-shape, if you're an entrepreneur and you don't have a T-shape starting out, you'll get beaten into a T-shape by the time you succeed, I think. So being a successful founder, I think, requires that, or develops those skills anyhow. I think most important is if there's clear aligned business and shared understood business, then the parties will make it work usually.
Okay. And so we've touched on some of the skills that we that are missing, that are needed. Maurice, you say that the skills, I mean, are essential, but in the end it boils down to business, right?
I think. I think the skills, you need deep technical skills. You need to be good at your business.
Mm-hmm.
You need to be really good at your content. So that's, whether it's whatever the technology is, that's given.
Okay.
Sorry.
No, that's a great point, because you need to have the skills for the business that you're getting into as well. I want to also remind all the folks who are watching us on LinkedIn and Facebook, make sure you use the comments to ask some of the questions. Now that we've talked about the skills, one of the questions that I always have, and we've seen this operate, and it's a bit of a let's say a loaded question, so to speak. We often see so Wise Guys, we run startup accelerators. Firstly, are startup accelerators, or can startup accelerators be used by corporates for innovation? And I'm not talking about working with startups. It could be in the past, I've seen like accelerators not being used as a way to get product or service, but to just foster innovation within the organization, to get employees out of their desk and talking to a founder. So let's start. This time I'm going to start backwards. I'm going to start with Maurice, Kristaps, and then Luis. Maurice, do you think like accelerators or incubation is this a tool for innovation for corporates? It's a loaded question for you, being in the corporate.
Yeah,
as well, right?
Yeah. I think the accelerator framework and the skills and the approaches are very useful and I think essential if the company has an area that they want to enter and develop. As far as the startups themselves go, I've found it to be problematic because of a mismatch with corporate expectations, and it's hard to find an alignment. It's hard to find an alignment with what the company's looking for and the exploration stage of a startup. Things that have worked, and I would want to do more of, is using the company, using the corporate as a pilot. So if it can be a customer for many of them, that works. It is like any business venture. It's about establishing that first relationship. So as a customer, if it's suitable, and we've had some success there. And then also, for your second point about inspiring people, with Startup Wise Guys, we've invited some of the startups to come and pitch. And if you're in a corporate, it's very refreshing just to see somebody doing a pitch, putting themselves on the line and pitching. And people will do it. People will come. So we've had them, and people come just as entertainment almost, but also it gives the startups a chance to refine their pitch. They get more comfortable, and usually they get very good feedback, especially from a real technical crowd, because they're going to listen critically and pick details. those are the two ways that have worked really well for us, and I want to do more of that.
Okay, great. I'm gonna come up with a follow-up question for you. Let's go to Kristaps, and then Luis. Like, what do you think, Kristaps? Does this work?
I totally agree with what Maurice said. So again, as I have prior Accenture had also my let's say more than 10 years, so to say, startup or entrepreneurial experience. I'm trying to and I'm applying a lot of the frameworks also in our solution. So we have both like incubator approach, we have accelerator approach, we have the approach of spinning out things once they are self-sufficient and then living on their own P&L, right? So I see, and again, coming to what Maurice said, it works for the things where you kind of work on new business units or new services, right? And as my hat is innovation lead and growth studio lead, that's my kind of daily job one is to identify those new business units and then help them to validate. Actually, is there actually a market validation? Because sometimes you don't go full cycle. Maybe it's killed, right? Quite early, and maybe it's kind of coming back in 2 years, right? It's also normal, right? So we are applying these frameworks a lot, and I believe that really works, and it's there is a healthy business case for that, right? This lean approach, not over investing, right? If we're coming back to this second part of the question regarding with the collaboration with the startups, yes, I agree that we as a partner, corporates as a partner, is very good, again, kind of healthy market validation, right? Whether this kind of super cool idea has a fit with the real business. So that's one. And again, it's a very good kind of, so to say, war room for the C-level pitch, right? And I would divide it. One is the C-level pitch, where also we sometimes help the startups to kind of polish it. And the other one is what also Maurice said, then there is this technical, again, SME who can kind of help to ask maybe difficult questions, but it's better that we ask those difficult questions, not the end client, and you lose it, right? So two things, technical SME feedback, and also helping to transform those cool pitches to the C-level pitches, because this is a different kind of answers you need to answer quick.
Okay, understood. So you say, Kristaps, you say yes, it does work, it can work. Given the limit, we put a limit on spend, time, stage gated, whatever, it somehow works. Luis, does having accelerators, incubators help in innovation? And I'm talking both from a customer perspective, but also from getting people out of their seats, thinking differently. You're muted. Hold on. You're muted. There we go.
Okay, there we go. Well, I think one of the interesting things in Baltics is that you already live in an incubator. No, there are many startups there, so it's easy that you go to have some drinks and you have entrepreneurs all around. So it's quite different from Spain, for instance, no? That the people have another lifestyle, no? So in the end, I think that culture, I think that the Accenture culture and all the companies, the corporates there would be that they have people in the family or friends or whatever that they are building something. So the conversation is more natural, I think. So that's the point is in these cultures that are more bureaucratic or more risk averse, how to build this type of interactions, no? Because these people don't share the space, no? But I think in the case of Baltics, I think it's impressive the ratio of startups per capita, no? So the point is that you're already in an incubator, so it's quite easy. Well, but I think it's quite interesting to see the dynamics in different countries, no? I think it depends a lot.
So it depends. The answer is it depends, but overall it could. Now here's a statement. This is after all the conversation we've had in 30 minutes, and I apologize. This is quite it's quite a serious question, but we might not have an answer for this, right? So everybody's mentioned to me working startup corporate collaboration. Yes, look at the business perspective. Work with scale ups. Focus on pitching. But my question here is, if you look at the cloud services, right? If anybody in 2006 had walked into a telco and said, hey, let's make cloud, let's make this like, let's buy data center, let's put servers and sell this to people, he would have been thrown out. If anybody in 2009 had taken something like TransferWise or Revolut and gone to a bank and said, hey, this could be your next thing, they would have been thrown out of the door and said, this is not our business. Maurice, if Avast, previous AVG Avast, whatever you want to say, had gone to the likes of Cisco and said, hey, how about we make a free antivirus that everybody gets? They would have been thrown out and said, this is not business. This does not align with our business. Yet Avast is a unicorn, the only cybersecurity unicorn, or at least the first one in Europe, right? So my question to you is like, I mean, coming back to the first statement I made, we don't know what we don't know. Airbnb, if anybody walked into a hotel and said, hey, let's start speaking to like people who have rooms and let them do it. The innovation is not coming from your industry. The innovation is coming from adjacent industry. Uber is not coming from the taxi or mobility industry. It's coming from a guy. And I'm giving you maybe popular examples. eBay wasn't started by Walmart. Amazon wasn't started by anybody who had anything to do with retail. Forget selling books. So my question is then how does a corporate expect to get to that point when they're not even entertaining the concept of, hey, fake news should be big. Hey, password authentication is going to be big. When themselves, it's not in their strategy. It's not even in their sphere of the radar, right? So,
yeah.
How do you? I mean, all this conversation, and I'm like, yeah, but you're not going to catch the big wave if you're only going with what you know. So, suggest. This is an open one.
Okay.
If I let anybody to start. So, Maurice, you can start if you go for it.
Okay, well, the unknown unknowns dilemma cuts both ways, right? Because you also don't know what's going to succeed.
Absolutely.
And that's so it just doesn't help you to invest at all. So with corporates who don't have the skills, typically the expert that you have in the accelerator, you have, sometimes you'll have a dedicated team of experts in discovery and startup development. Corporates don't have, and they fire those people because they don't want to waste resources. They just want to be very efficient. So you don't have that typically. You just have people being very efficient. So it's better to wait and monitor the startup scene and see who's getting traction, and then pay a lot extra to acquire. And it's worth it. It's worth it because especially if you're a listed company, right? You can explain why you're doing it. You've got the numbers that you need to get the funding, and you're using your existing capabilities. In our case, it would be distribution, probably customer base, to scale them. That makes a lot more sense and is easier to do than to say, we think that there's a new emerging area here and we should invest in it. So instead of innovation, it's more the strategy M&A group. M&A. And they say, and that's the way to do it. Pay a lot more, but probably over time, it does make sense.
Okay. Let's go to Louis next, and then Kristaps, you're after that. So anybody got anything to say, Louis, on this?
Yeah, for me, it's quite curious because in Fjord, in the 2000s, we did Apple ID before Apple ID, Dropbox before Dropbox, Nest before Nest, and it was rejected by the clients. And we had the idea with a design, and they didn't see it. And this is as Maurice says, no, that you need traction. There was no traction. They didn't see the market, but the idea was good, no. Also, we did Venmo before Venmo for a bank, and they didn't see it. And then you have all the people doing these ideas, no? And I remember when we opened in Spain, in Madrid, I remember going to a bank saying that we were designing for PayPal. And they said, wow, this is a toy company. Because it was too small, no? 2 years later, they were hiring people from PayPal. So I think the cue to innovate is about anger and frustration. I think, tell me what is broken, tell me what do you hate. So I hate taxis, I hate hotels. And I think there is a cue in Oscar, the High Oscar, the insurance company. They said when they get funded, we didn't create Oscar because we loved health insurance. Why the opposite? No, they didn't know anything about insurance. So the point there is that they are coming from, as you said, from the experience that is broken. They are not coming from the industry. So they have totally different levels of risk, different ways of looking, and they're going directly to the customer problem. So that creates a sense of Robin Hood, no, underdog. So the people even want to help them, no, to succeed. This is what happens with IKEA and all these companies, that they have a powerful narrative against the status quo, no. And there is this emotional part of okay, these guys are coming to save me because banks are not talking to me, because health insurance is too complex, because the telco is only bills and bills and bills, no. So, and I think anger and frustration for me is the best cue to start innovating. Yeah.
So what you're trying to tell me is that, for corporates who don't have things on the radar, they should kind of look at the anger and frustration,
definitely,
because that's what's gonna drive it. And funny enough, this is, at least in my experience, this is what the corporates try and ignore the most. Like
exactly.
they try and ignore the frustration and I always tell my startups, like, whenever they want to find out about frustration, they can just look at the 1-star reviews. 1- and 2-star reviews on any website will tell you exactly what's wrong with the product you're competing with. So and that creates frustration. Kristaps, over to you. What are your thoughts on this unknown? I mean, Maurice has given a really good need, like, hey, we don't, like, we'll just buy them. We'll figure it out and we'll buy them. What about you?
Yeah, definitely. We can't know everything, but and this is a kind of, again, from very practical side. You guys know, I guess, S-curve model from the business growth perspective, right? So there should be a proportion. You kind of always investing in something new. Of course, for the corporations, we will not be investing in, like, as Maurice just said, not validated, kind of totally out of space new trends, right? Of course, we will go if there is at least some type of attraction, right, for that. And again, I guess that's how that's how it is, and we can look from both sides whether it's good or not. But the resources are in that sense limited, right? You can't overinvest. You need to have these resources and invest in the right time. So not always a first mover advantage is the one who will succeed in the market, right? Who takes the value out of this new service, of this new product, right? And again, coming back what Luis said about this problem discovery. So that's the point we always talking with our account teams. Ask for the problem, for the pain, right? Don't come with a kind of like a solution or with a product. Find the problem, find this pain point, and then kind of open that and be this kind of internal disruptor, right? It's coming back to what Farid, you said. Why it's everybody is kind of, those big companies have been disrupted, because I think previously they were very self-sufficient and they were not afraid that something gonna come, right? But now. I, at least, and I guess you also, as you said, you facilitating different innovation workshops. We more and more apply this kind of thinking. Think how you can disrupt yourself. So imagine you are your competitor, where you will disrupt yourself, right? And again, also looking on a different industries. What are the innovations there? Because at the end of the day, the end user is the same person who uses a taxi, who watches the TV. And so I'm always saying he or she expects the same interaction. So if I have a seamless interaction in a taxi, I want the same in a healthcare, in the banking, in the retail, right?
Okay. So what you're saying is that, I mean, it's probably right to kind of look at the business side of things, like Maurice said, but also then focus on the problems. Now, it's been interesting. Like, I mean, I'm getting like interesting insights. I have a follow-on question, but I also want to tell people we have roughly about 10 minutes left. 13 minutes left. If there are questions, you can ask them. One of the things that I do want to kind of know is we kind of touched very briefly on it, but from a corporate perspective or from a collaborative perspective, what organization structures have worked? Like, what is a corporate can be, flat, can have innovation departments, can have, individual teams, product teams innovating as well. So I want to know, like, in your experience, has there been a particular, and this is mainly for the corporate folks who are listening right now, like what organization structures have worked, and are there any suggested organization structures that you think would do better in the future for this kind of collaboration to happen? Who wants to go first? I'm going to keep this one open because we're coming to the end of it, and we're hoping that you guys have.
Maybe and I can quickly kind of start, and then I would say it's coming back to the topic we talked about, whether we applying different incubation and acceleration frameworks, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I would say it's slightly overlapping, right? So we definitely use that type of horizontal, or I would say even kind of multidimensional approach. And again, coming back what I mentioned as an example of this agile cross-business, cross kind of service teams. So really fusing folks together and having a product owner from the business, and also, let's say we call it also similar like a scrum master, more from the field, right? So they work together, but at the end, as Maurice said, the business should define the end, kind of the goal, right? And then we work on towards this kind of common value, right? Of course, it shouldn't be just a kind of like a financial KPIs. It shouldn't be the quality. It should be the satisfied end user or the consumer centric, right? But I would say that's kind of the system. What we see have been proven, and applying this accelerator or incubator approach gives kind of it's funny to say, gives acceleration for growth, right?
Okay, fair enough. It's interesting you say that, because in some cases, like, people have a very specific team that's doing it, or the product team doesn't get involved till much later on. So that's a great kind of organizational structure. Luis, Maurice, anybody, you guys want to chip into this? Do you agree with this? Do you disagree with this? Do you have your own?
I agree, but sorry, go.
Maurice, go for it, then we'll go to Luis.
Okay, thanks. So I have experience in a few different models. In one case, it was a really design-led innovation function which worked with the business, but the design was a separate pillar in the company, really. And the problem with that is it never really connected enough. There was not enough transfer between the business and the design. So something always hit the ground on the way across. There was always misunderstanding because there was too much division. Then I've been part of an innovation lab. So really its sole role was to have a bunch of specialists starting using best practice. And we did some tremendous products, things we're really proud of, but they hit the ground as we tried to transfer them to the main company continuously. So, and often, well, several times, the main company would abandon it and then years later start it up again and have to relearn everything. So only years later did they see the point of it and wish they had it. What I have seen work best is when there is a dedicated internal team, like you've heard maybe outsourcing. What is outsourcing innovation is like outsourcing your research. It's just like outsourcing your weekend. That's you have to get the knowledge, the practical knowledge in-house, and then facilitated by experts who have the skills, the frameworks and the hierarchies who can make it happen faster. But the team who's going to take it forward needs to be working on it from the beginning.
Okay. I mean, you also mentioned, so I quite like this concept of like having an internal team that is kind of taking control in charge of it, and then kind of using different resources. But one thing that you mentioned right at the beginning of the answer was this concept of like corporates forgetting and like, closing innovation organizations and then starting them again 5 years later, different name, different avatars, but kind of started by somebody else. Which I've seen happen a lot, funny enough. So it's actually a great point to add there. Luis, what about you? What kind of organization hierarchies have you seen work, or structures?
Yeah, I think it's about the sandbox mentality, a place to experiment, and also to bring the people from the traditional parts of the corporation, so they can absorb the culture and the ways of working. So they can try new things, they can see things from a different perspective. And at the same time, I see something that is quite challenging. When you have people in a corporation for 20 years, for instance. It's very difficult to reinvent yourself because your vision of the world goes to the corporation. So it's quite challenging that, no? So the point is, how do you bring these fresh perspectives that you don't kill them when you come? Because there is a way of doing things. Whatever you say, you're an innovator. There is some type of I don't know, that people are wary of this type of new profiles, no? So I think there are companies that are acquiring doing a lot of acquisitions, and they are preparing themselves to integrate this type of people without killing them, no? Because the culture and the I would say the lifestyle is totally different, no? So that's the point. This sandbox where you can protect, and when it's ready, doing this transfer that Maurice says, no?
So, I mean, again, an interesting, a sandbox environment. And I wanted to touch something on about failure, but I'm not going to touch it because we don't have time. Because we had actually one question being asked from LinkedIn by Madara. It's a long question. I'm going to kind of break it into a smaller question, which is basically she's saying that, corporates obviously have more resource, more capacity, and so they can actually make more mistakes, so to speak, whereas startups, they need to test and adapt their products on the fly, sometimes even after their launch. They have to constantly experiment. Do you think that sets them apart, like the corporates, just because they can lose a lot more before it finally hits them, whereas the startup, the founders can go broke, and so they have to constantly be being agile. So Maurice, you're shaking your head and you're like, nah, not on my watch.
No, I think I understand why it seems that way, but my experience is actually corporates are run much more lean than startups. Startups know they're going to make mistakes, and nobody gets fired usually when you make a mistake, as long as the company stays open. But in corporates, everybody has their quarterly targets. They'll have their bonuses. They're focused on one thing, and they don't validate hypotheses, unless they're, maybe the marketing function, design function often has A/B testing, and that's really good. But in terms of larger market testing, corporates don't do that. I think.
No. Okay. So
I think startups are much better to do that.
That's an interesting answer. It also reminds me of I once went to a really forward-thinking HR seminar, and the gentleman over there said that it's interesting that in the corporate world everybody works on bonuses, and in the startups nobody works for bonuses. And a bonus, in the true sense, is your boss basically not trusting you. Your boss saying that I'll give you money, but I don't trust you to do your job, so I'm going to keep part of your pay. But that's for a different conversation. But Louis or Kristaps, do you guys agree that with what Maurice said, like corporates are run lean, or they have more capacity to fail than startups? Let's keep this one short because I have a final question as well, which is needed as well. Louis?
They fail a lot. In fact, no, there are many initiatives that fail in corporates. The problem is that they don't make any noise because they have a big basket of initiatives, no? And they say that the startups die because they don't find anyone to talk to, and corporates die because they stop to talk with people, no, with customers. And I think the startups can teach the corporates to talk in terms of problems and not products, no, in terms of customers, no, because they're very close to the problem. They're getting birth of the problem. So they're fresh, and corporates have a lot of complexity to manage, so they get far ahead from the customer problem. So I think this on one side, that the corporate as a platform of innovation would be, I think, with this sandbox and these human APIs would be a good approach, I think.
Yeah, it is true that, I mean, corporates, I agree with Maurice as well that somebody does get fired and lose their bonus if things fail, but at the same time, in the corporate, there's a huge, like, the company doesn't go bankrupt unless something really massively bad happens if you fail. Kristaps, for you, I'm going to change the question because we've got like 3-4 minutes left, and I wanted to kind of come to the final question, which is mainly for our startups, the guys who are struggling to kind of work with corporates. So if for a final question, what would each of you, and starting with Kristaps, what should each of you give as an advice or one key thing that startups should keep in mind if they want to really collaborate with corporates? And a caveat here is you have the right to say, don't collaborate with corporates, just do your own thing and you'll succeed. So Kristaps, let's start with you. We'll go to Maurice after, and then Luis, you can have the final say. So one advice.
Yeah, so I would say the circle has closed, right? I would come to what we start, right? So again, the patience from understanding the corporate sales cycle, it's much longer if you just go straight forward to your client, right? And put yourself in the shoes of corporate, so to understand what's in it for him or her, right? So yeah, that would be the quick answer.
Okay, great answer there, Maurice. So patience, Kristaps. Having said that, a lot of startups don't actually have the time or the bank balance for.
Yeah, that's why I
patience.
want to be very transparent from the beginning. Don't overpromise to them, right?
Perfect. Okay, good example. So guys, if you don't have money to last it out, maybe think of a faster way of hustling through. Maurice, over to you.
I'd start in the middle of the corporation management level. I would contact people on LinkedIn, and I would not make them a pitch. I wouldn't be trying to sell them anything. I would be asking them for advice, and then just find someone to talk about your ideas with, and then gradually form a relationship and work your way up.
Perfect. There's a saying I always tell the startups: ask for cash and you'll get advice. Ask for advice and you'll get cash. So perfectly summarized there, Maurice, and I completely agree with you there. Luis, over to you.
What I would do is, as a designer, our work is to empathize with the people, no? So as Kristaps said, do research with the corporates. What does it mean? What type of people do you have? And treat them as a customers also. So because in the end, if you are in B2B or industry X, you will have to work with corporates, yes or yes, no? Normally. So the point is, you have to do your duty and research how a corporate works. So for me, it's about customer understanding, customer research, and also corporate research. So that would be, I think, a way of saving a lot of I don't know, pain, no, in the process.
Exactly. So I think you come back to a very important point. And one of the points that I actually tell all the startups, and a lot of startups forget about this, is to actually have empathy for the corporate.
Exactly.
And this is and this is something that can actually make or break this relationship of making the sale, but even having insights from the corporate. Because I always tell startups, if you can't sell to the corporate, get insights from them, because remember, their frustrations are going to be your revenue, right? So there's always an opportunity over there. Okay, guys, we're pretty much at the end of this. I know we'd marked you in the calendar till 4:45. It's been a unstable internet, Mike, me dropping in and off, Luisa jumping in, and Zane jumping in for this. But it's been a fantastic panel. I think we covered both controversial and a lot more kind of not so controversial questions as well. And from what it sounds like is that startups can work with corporates. Acceleration does help, but there's always kind of limited in boundary in what they want to achieve. I still believe that corporates, they still need to kind of be a little bit more risk taking. Like one of you also suggested that we need to have an appetite to take more risk, because otherwise I think that we will miss out on this next big wave, and this wave is probably already gone. And we've kind of said no to it already by not working with a particular startup. But there are restrictions that corporates have, and there are limitations that they have as well. And I think this is interesting, because whenever I talk to people, I say it's interesting the times we live in. All the corporates want to think like startups, and all the startups want to work like corporates, right? And nobody's happy where they are. But I think this is the opportunity, right? So this is the opportunity where we get to innovate, and corporates can think of startups and work with startups, and startups become corporates. So I want to thank you guys all for taking the time today. I know it's Easter week. A lot of you are in nice holiday spots and taking your time off today to talk to our audience. This has been great. Hopefully we'll do a follow-up on this. And thanks a lot for listening to us and answering, and take care.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, gents.
Pleasure.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks,
Maurice.
Farid. Thanks, everyone.